All right, Rabbi, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilson Mishpacha from Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this year as a zechus for Besaros Tavos for all of Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei, Dr. Linda Weinberg, in loving memory of her husband, the 53 years, Dr. Paul Weinberg, Paris Moshe ben Avram David, in commemoration of his 4th yard site, and Avram and Shane Kelman in memory of their parents, Jerome and Bernice Kelman, and Alexander and Frederica David. And our Daf Yomi sponsor for this morning, Azriel and Iris Miller, Le'iloi Nishmas Mordechai ben Zev Meir, and Leah Lisa Bas Moshe Zichron Mirach. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, the families in the Chamar hostages, will be returned to their Mishpachos B'Shalom and B'Karov, and our precious soldiers will be successful B'Chol Ma'aseh Yadehem. So with that, let us begin. We have a great daf ahead of us today, really great daf. Today's daf is Kuf Hey 105. We are picking up on the Mishnah, on 104b. Mishnah says as follows. So we'll say now, same topic but different. What do I mean? So remember again, if you look at the Lashon over here, the Mishnah says Mida b'chevel ani mochel hein cheser hein yaser. So I will say, interestingly enough, so remember in our last Mishnah, we essentially learned that there are two different ways in which you can go ahead and sell a base core, right? I'm selling land to Ruvain. So there are two ways I can sell the land. I can sell Ruvain. I can say, Ruvain, I'm selling you a base car, Mida b'chevel. I'm selling you a base car of land, and we're going to measure it out with the rope. Remember again, that was a measuring rope. So that meant that what if I used that Lashon, what did it mean? What did it mean? Exact. Excellent. In other words, that I'm selling you exactly a base car, as opposed to I'm selling you, Reuven, a base car, hein yaser, hein chaser. So what does that mean? More or less. More or less. And again, obviously, more or less itself is still governed by a certain framework, a quarter of a sa'ah, a quarter of a kav per sa'ah. But again, in this case, we're doing something a little bit different. I say to Ruvain, I'm selling you a base car of land, mida bechavel, hein yaser, hein chaser. Which means what? I'm making two contradictory statements. So in the same statement, I'm telling Ruvain, I'm selling you exactly a base car, more or less. So we'll say we've seen this concept before, that in general, what do you do in life when you make contradictory statements? What is the halacha? In other words, how do we view such a statement like that? So again, so this is the actual lashon that I'm using in the transaction. Reuven, I'm selling you a base core of land, exactly as measured out, more or less. So what's the halacha? Batal hein chaser hein yeser mida b'chevel. So halacha l'maisa, essentially the second lashon is mevatel the first. That what the Mishnah is saying is that halacha l'maisa, when you make two contradictory statements, we take the second one over the first one, as the second one is viewed as canceling the first. Okay, the Mishnah also goes ahead and highlights this, the opposite. Hein chesar, hein yaser, mida b'chavel. Same case, just the reverse. Reuven, I'm selling you a parcel of land, right? I'm selling you a base car, more or less, exactly. So what's the halacha? Top of Kufay 105a. Batal mida b'chavel, hein chesar, hein yaser, divrei ben nanas. So halacha l'maisa, the second lashon is mevatel the first. So mida b'chavel, which is the exact, right? I'm selling you exactly a base car. That's the second lashon. That is mevatel the first. The Mishnah ends off by saying these are the words of Ben Nanas. So we'll say what's going on in the Mishnah over here? So I'm sorry, if you just go back for just a moment to Kuf Daled Amud Beis. If you take a look at the last line in the Rashbam, so here the Rashbam says it beautifully. The Rashbam says, "Desfirle lahaitana." So the author of the Mishnah, by the way, is Ben Nanas. We've actually seen this before. So Ben Nanas of Zab the opinion, "Desfirle lahaitana techol shnei l'shonos shal mechira shesos zeh." Anytime that you have two lashonos, that you have two wordings of a sale that go ahead and contradict each other, what's the halacha? Tafas lashon achron. We both say that's the phrase. Tafas lashon achron means seize the last statement. The chazerbo besoch kedei ramin arishon. Now there's a couple of things happening over here. So I will say, so this Mishnah reflects the view of Ben Nanas. Ben Nanas says that whenever you're making two contradictory statements, we always say tafas lashon achron, grab or seize the last lashon. that the last thing said is the determining statement for the transaction. Now the Rashbam just adds in over here that this is all presupposing that the two statements are being made toch kedei dibor of one another. Now what does it mean toch kedei dibor? So the Gemara defines that as the amount of time that it takes to say Shalom alecha Rabbi Umori. That literally, peace be upon you, my master, my teacher, my teacher, my master. That's toch kedei dibor. So the idea over here is, if you go ahead and you make two statements in such close verbal proximity to each other, so Bananas essentially says is, we view the second one as primary and the first one as if it didn't occur. So that's what's happening over here in this Mishnah. Tafas Lashon Achron. Ultimately, again, sees the last Lashon. Beautiful. Okay, back to Kuf Hamad Aleph. Let's go. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Abba bar Mamo Amrav Cholkin Alov Chaverov Al Benanas. So Rabbi says, so this is very interesting. So now comes along Rabbi Abba. Now Rabbi says, you see a Mishnah like this, right? And all you see is one opinion. So it's a little bit dangerous, because when you see a Mishnah with one opinion, what could you think? What could you think? Everyone agrees with this. So the first thing comes along Rabbi Abba bar Mamo and says, no. Says in the name of Rav, not true. This is, while this is the opinion of Bananas, so Bananas' friends, so to speak, are cholik. They disagree with him. Take a look at the Rashbam. Cholkin alav al-chaver. And Rabbi says, this is a really fascinating machlokes. L'dido hava maman amotel b'safek the Cholkin. So Bananas, in Bananas' world, is very clear. You make two contradictory statements, as long as you make toch kedei dibor of one another, then what? Then halacha l'maiso, the second one is the dominant one, right? Tafas lashon achron. Now, what does the other school of thought say? The other school of thought says is that this is what's called maman amotel b'safek, which means we don't know what to do with two statements. We just don't know what to do with it. The Cholkin, the misveikale iamrinan tafas lashon rishon o lashon achron. So I will say, the other school of thought is we don't know what to do with this, right? I sell Reuven a piece of land, and I say, Reuven, I'm selling you the land. Base core, I'm selling you mida bechavel hein chaser hein yeser. I don't know. I don't know what's going. Obviously, well, here's what I do know. What do we know? What do we know? I'm making two contradictory statements. That's what we know. Is the first one primary? Is the second one primary? I have no idea. I have no idea. So we'll say, so therefore the other school of thought says, so therefore because I have no idea, what do we call this? We call this a suffix, which is, and therefore I will say, going with the idea of sumchus, that maman hamotel b'suffix, what do you do when you have money shrouded in doubt? What do you do? Cholkin. You split it. Now remember, go say, that's the same. There's not machloksim over here. Who argues on sumchus? It's good chazar. Who argues? The Rabbanan say, Hamotzi mechaver alav haraya. Okay, but going without wading into all of that, so the idea is, comes along Rav, and Rav says that the other school of thought is, we don't know which statement is the primary one, and therefore the simple answer is Cholkin. Cholkin. Go back to Rashman for just a moment. Cholkin alav chaverav. L'dido, according to the other school of thought, Havi maman amotel b'safek, it's money shrouded in doubt. The Cholkin, and therefore we split it. Whatever the it is. In other words, however you define the disputed amount, we'll have to split it. The mistake aluhu, because this other school of thought says. The misavkalahu iamrina tafas lashon rishon o lashon achron. Do we seize the first lashon or the second lashon? Kedim mefarish lakamei masnisin demerchatz. We'll see in just a moment. Umiu rav sfir lekeben. All right, fine. So we'll leave the rest over here. So let's go back to the Gemara. My Kamashmalan. So I'll say, so now Rav makes it sound like he's introducing new information over here. That there's Bananas who says Tafas Lashon Achron, and then there's the other Chevra. And who's the other Chevra? Everyone else besides Bananas, who's not sure. Do we say Tafas Lashon Rishon, Tafas Lashon Achron? So because we're unsure, Maman Amutal B'Safek, and Maman Amutal B'Safek, money shrouded in doubt, Cholkin. So Gemara says, okay, what's the Chiddush? My Kamashmalan Tanina, we learned this already. In other words, we know that this is an ongoing machlokes. Where's the machlokes? Well, so we've seen this before. Bava Metzia, Ma'aseh b'Tzipori. Listen to this. There was a story, an episode in Tzipori. Be'echad shesachar merchatz mechavero. So I'll say one went ahead. So there was a guy. We'll call him Ruvain. Right? Ruvain went ahead and rented a bathhouse from Shimon. Okay, now watch this. Here was the transaction. B'shneimasar zehuvim l'shana, dinar zahav l'chodesh. Now the way they structured the lease was as follows. So Reuven was going to pay Shimon 12 gold pieces for the year, 1 gold dinar per month. So that's how they arranged the lease. So the lease had these two lashonos, 12 dinarim for the year, 1 dinar per month. Now what happened? Now what happens? By the way, so at first it doesn't sound like a big deal. What occurred? Leap year. So now here's the shayla. What's the status of the 13th month? So now everything depends on how you read the lease, right? Because remember again, on one hand, the first part of the lease said 12 dinarim for the year. What's a year? A year is a calendrical year. How many months make up a calendrical year? 12 or 13, whatever it is. In other words, a year is a year. That's the unit. So on the other hand, the second part of the lease said 1 dinar per month. So we'll say, so now what's the nafkamina? If you say tafas lashon rishon, or let's go work backwards. If you like bananas, you say tafas lashon achron. So what's the halacha over here? What's the halacha? Reuven has to pay an additional dinar for the 13th month. If you say tafas lashon rishon, now again, the truth is, I just want to point out, we're not really seeing an opinion over here that says tafas lashon rishon. Instead, what are we seeing over here? We're seeing over here an opinion that says we don't know. We don't know. In which case, again, perhaps like in this case, we'd split the difference with the 13th month. Okay, but the point over here is whether or not you say tafas lashon achar or not makes a big difference over here. So, but what happened? So uba. Here we go. Uba ma'aseh Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, v'lefnei Rabbi Yossi. So this case came before Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi. Va'amru yachloku es chodesh ha'ibor. And they said, split the 13th month, which essentially means Reuven pays half rent. Half a dinar for the 13th month. Look at the Rashbam Yachloku. The Rashbam is in the short lines, about six lines before it gets from the intermediate wide lines. Yachloku yitin lo schar chatzi chodesh. So Reuven has to pay a half a dinar for the leap month, for the 13th month. The mamon hamutal b'safek cholkin. Rabbi said, now where do you get that? Because again, this is money shrouded in doubt. Therefore, we split it. The misavkalahu itafas lashon rishon or lashon achron. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that Allah Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi don't hold like bananas, right? They don't hold, I should say, they don't automatically hold like bananas. I'm sorry, that tafas lashon achron, and therefore again, this is mamon amotel b'safek, and therefore we split it. So therefore you see that there's a school of thought which argues on bananas. Okay, so I'll say, so just to follow the flow over here, right? So the Mishnah espouses the view of bananas that we always take the last lashon, comes along Rav, and Rav says there's another school of thought that disagrees with bananas. And that other school of thought is we're not sure tafas lashon rishon or tafas lashon acharon, and therefore because we're not sure, it's mamon hamutal b'safek, money shrouded in doubt. Because it's money shrouded in doubt, yachloku. So now the Gemara says, Rav, you're acting like you discovered America over here, like you're going ahead and giving us new information. This is not new information. We already know that this is a machlokes. So Rav, why the need to tell us that there are those who argue on bananas when we know that already? To which the Gemara says, you're right. Ime hasam, because if it would have just come from this case, hava amina, so let's listen to this. Hava amina, I would have thought like this. Hasam hu di'ikal meimar mehadar kahadar bay. So we'll say, here's the difference. In the bathhouse case, I could have easily thought that what's happening over here, right? Reuven says to Shimon, or Shimon says to Reuven, I'm leasing you my bathhouse, 12 dinar per year, 1 dinar per month. How could you understand that transaction? How could you understand it? That really Shimon is reneging, right? In other words, that halacha l'maisa, he's changing his mind. Originally it was going to be a yearly lease. Now it's a monthly lease. So the Gemara says, so here's the difference, right? Either he's reneging or maybe he's just explaining. In other words, we really don't know how to interpret that statement. Now why not? Because those statements still exist within the same sphere. So we're not sure exactly what to do with those two statements. Is he clarifying a previous statement or is he reneging on a previous statement? Aval hacha, but in the Mishnah, devadai kahadar bei ema lo. So I will say, but over here, halacha l'maaseh in the Mishnah, right? Where clearly Rabbi say the two lashonos are irreconcilable, right? Remember again in our Mishnah what happens? I say to Reuven, I'm selling you a parcel of land. I'm selling you a base car, right? Mida b'chavel, and then I say hein chaser v'hein chaser hein yaser. Those two statements are irreconcilable. They're irreconcilable. Look at the Rashbam. Shaloshon achron machish es harishon. Ema lo pligi rabbana le'ela tafas lashon achron. So Rabbi said like this. I would have thought, where is there a machlokes? When do we say maman amot of a safek cholkin? Because we're not sure tafas lashon rishon or tafas lashon achron. When? That's in a case where the lashonos maybe do coexist, maybe one could clarify the other, so we're not sure, right? So Reuven is leasing a bathhouse from Shimon, and Shimon says, I'm giving it to you for 12 dinar a year, 1 dinar a month. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Is statement number 2 clarifying statement number 1, or is statement number 2 uprooting statement number 1? So that's where maybe again, so Bananas is easy. Bananas always says, Tafas lashon achron. But maybe the other school of thought says, we're not sure, so therefore it's maman amotel b'safek cholkin. Whenever you have money in doubt, you split it. But in the Mishnah, where the cases are so clearly the statements are so clearly contradictory, you can't have both. And you can't say that one statement is clarified the other because they're contradictory. Maybe everyone agrees with Bananas that tafas lashon achron, to which the Gemara says, kamash molon no. Kamash molon that even in the Mishnah's case, there is still a machlokes. In the Mishnah's case, it's still machlokas, and even in the Mishnah's case, this other school of thought would still say it's maman amota b'safek and therefore cholkin. So therefore, when Rav, so now take this full circle, when Rav comes along and Rav says that halacha l'maaseh there are those who are cholik on Bananas, he means even in a case like the Mishnah. Even in a case like the Mishnah where the two statements are so clearly inherently contradictory, there's still a machlokes about it. Okay, so Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Zudir Bananas. So we'll say, remember again, so Rav Yehuda said the name of Shmuel, these are the words of Bananas. The Chacham say, halach achar pachos shebelashonos. So we'll say, so whereas Bananas says tafas lashon achron, the Chacham say, the Chacham are identified as the group who argues on Bananas. So they say, halach achar pacho shebelashonos. So what does that mean? Take a look at the Rashbam in the intermediate wide lines, about 10 lines up from before it gets really wide. Halach achar pacho shebelashonos, achar osa lashon shemafchis koach shalokeach. Go after whichever lashonos awards the least benefit to the purchaser. The misafkale itafas lashon rishon o achron v'yad mocher shu muchzak bekarka shelo al ha'elyona. So the idea over here is whenever you have a suffix, so this is kind of saying almost like hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. So therefore, go with whatever explanation awards the greatest benefit to the seller, the least amount of benefit to the purchaser. Which again, like I said, is a more complicated way of saying hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. Hilchach heichad damar lemida bechavel vein chaser vein yaser. Chazina, so fine. So let's go back to the Gemara. Halach achar pacha lashonos. So the Gemara says zu velosfirle. So now this sounds like Shmuel is saying that the Mishnah is reflective of the view of Bananas, but Shmuel himself doesn't hold like Bananas. So the Gemara says, is that true? Vaha Rav and Shmuel. Listen to this. Vaha Rav u'Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, both of them said the following: Kor b'shloshim ani mocher lecha. So this is an interesting case. I say to Reuven, I'm selling you a core, which is a volume measurement. I'm selling you a core for 30 dinarim. Well, I'll call it 30 dinarim. All right, I'm selling to you. So what's the halacha? So we'll say, so if I say this to Reuven has the ability to renege on the transaction up until the last sa'ah. Up until the last saw. Now, what's the logic behind that? Because the transaction is framed as a unit of a core, up until the time that the core is measured out, the transaction is not solidified, which means that Reuven has the ability to renege on it until the final measurement of produce is measured out. Okay. However, listen to this. Kor b'shloshim sa'a. Sa'a b'sela. Kor b'shloshim sa'a b'sela ani mocha lecha. What happens if I say to Reuven, I'm selling you a core for 30 dinarim, or a kor for 30 sela, sorry, and each sa'ah for a sela. So you see what happened over here? What did I do in this transaction? I framed it in two ways. You use lashonos. Number one, a general lashon of a total amount. I'm selling you a kor for 30 sela, and then I said a sa'ah, each sa'ah a sela. So what's the halacha? Rishon kana. So again, Reuven acquires each sa'ah as it's measured out. So we'll say, what do you see from that? What do you see from that? Now, once again, that's kind of two statements. On one hand, there's a statement about a general sale of a kor for 30 slime, and then there is each sa'ah for a sala. What is the halacha? What do you see from here? Tafas lashon achron, and halacha l'maisa, as each sa'ah is measured out, Reuven acquires it and can renege on that sa'ah. So who is the opinion over here? This is Rabbi Shmuel. So we'll say that's tafas lashon achron. So what do you see from here? Rabbi Shmuel both hold of tafas lashon achron like bananas, to which the Gemara says, Elazu usvirli. You're right. Shmuel was saying this is the opinion of bananas, and Shmuel himself also subscribes to this opinion. So Rashi says, really? Umi svirli, does Shmuel really hold like bananas? The tafas lashon achron. Vamar Shmuel beba be'emtza chodesh askinon. So also listen to this. Very interesting. Back to the bathhouse case. When do we say that in the leap month we split the leap month? When is that true cholkin? That's only if Reuven and Shimon come to Beis Din in the middle of the month, right? So now middle of the month has gone by, which means again, Reuven has used it for a month, right? He's paid, so to speak, paid for a month, and then there's still a month ahead. That's when you say cholkin. So the Gemara says, Aval ba b'tchilas hachodesh. But if halacha l'maisa again, we go ahead and they come to Beis Din at the beginning of the month, then what? Kula l'maskir. Then halacha l'maisa, the value of the entire 13th month goes to the owner, the lesser. B'sof hachodesh, at the end of the month, kula l'socher. Then all of it belongs ultimately again to the renter, which Bava says another way of saying hamotzi mechaver lavaraya, right? So again, so you see that Shmuel himself does not hold like bananas of tafas lashon achron. Ella amud beis ella li'olam zu v'lo svirolei. You're right. The truth is, we're also going full circle a little bit over here, that halacha l'maisa again, that really Shmuel does not hold of bananas, right? Shmuel does not hold ultimately again of tafas lashon achra. So I'll say, by the way, so I just want to point out, there's an interesting qualification, right? So remember, let's go back to the bathhouse case in just a moment. What was the bathhouse case? I'm leasing to Reuven a bathhouse. Or I shouldn't say theoretical. This was an actual case that occurred in Sipori, right? So Reuven rented a bathhouse to Shimon, and the way it worked is the way they framed the transaction was Shnei Masar Zuhuvim l'shana. It's 12 zuhuvim, 12 gold pieces for the year. So dinar zav l'chodesh, 1 dinar per month. Then it became a leap year. So the shaila was, what do you do in the 13th month? So remember again, according to bananas, what do you do in that case? According to bananas, what's the halacha? Tafas lashon achron. Therefore, we look at the last, and the last lashon was what? A monthly rental. So because a monthly rental, month 13, 14, 15, it doesn't make a difference. It's going to be a dinar zav. The Rabbanan said it's maman amotel b'safek. We're not sure. Tafas lashon rishon, tafas lashon achron, and therefore again halacha l'maisa cholkin. We go ahead and we split it. Shmuel came along and Shmuel said the truth is everything depends on when this case came to Beis Din. If it would have come at the beginning of the month, so Shmuel said, I would tell the renter that he's got to pay a month's salary. He's got to pay a month's salary, a month rental, because halacha l'maisa essentially motzi mechaver lavaraya, right? The owner of the bathhouse is muchsak. You want to use it for this month, pay for it, right? Or prove that you're not chayiv for it. If it came at the end of the month, right, so in other words, it was already used, in that case, again, the burden of proof would be upon Reuven, the owner of the bathhouse, to extract the rent from Shimon, the renter. So you see from here that halacha l'maisa, so now back to my base, sorry, El Olam Zu Lo Sirle. Shmuel does not hold like bananas. So the Gemara says, I v'hasam Taimamai. So what is the svara when it comes to the bathhouse? Mishum de tafis. Ultimately, again, because halacha l'maisa, he is muchzak in it. So take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Hasam, it's like in the middle of the shortest lines over here. The Hasam gabe merchatz taima mayach loku. Why is it that we say that Reuven and Shimon have to split the 13th month? Mishum the toughest kol echad achatzi kidu kumna beba be'emtza chodesh. Because since this case is presenting itself in the middle of the month, essentially each one is muchzak in 50%. How so? So the renter is muchzak because he's already used it for half the month. The owner is muchzak because, so to speak, there's still another half a month there. So each of them have a chazaka in half. So the top is kol echad achazikidu kimna beba be'emtza chodesh v'adin rabbanan da'azli basra pacho shebelashonos shamocha muchzak hacha nami hatafis. So we'll say so too again in the case of the core. The hacha is by the case of the core. Kor l'shloshim, right? Kor l'shloshim and sa'ah b'sela. Ultimately, again, each one is toughest in a certain amount. So, right? So Reuven is toughest in the amount that he's still holding on to, and Shimon is toughest in the amount that he has already received. Fine. So Amar Rafuna. So we'll say, so again, so essentially what we're beginning to see over and over and over is that there is this yisodistic machlokes between bananas and the rest of the world, right, so to speak, right? Bananas holds that Tafas Lashon Achron sees the last Lashon, and everyone else is holding that Halacha L'maisa, we're not sure, right? Essentially, it's going to be, we're not sure, Tafas Lashon Rishon, Tafas Lashon Achron, and therefore, again, it's Mamon Hamutul B'Safek, and anytime you have Mamon Hamutul B'Safek, money shrouded in doubt, Yachloku, you split it. Okay, so let's say now a very interesting case over here. Amrav Huna, Amri Beirav, Istira B'Meya, Moi, so Istira, Amrav, Istira Meya Moi, Meya Moi, no, sorry, read that wrong. Beirav, Istira Meya, Moi Meya Moi. Sorry. Istira Meya Moi, Meya Moi. Meya Mai Istira. Okay, so what does that mean? Sorry, a little bit of a tongue twister. I will say, so an Istira, an Istira. So an Istira, we'll say, an Istira is worth 96 ma. That's the value of an Istira, 96 ma. So in this case over here, what's happening? Reuven is buying something from Shimon, whatever. He's buying a shovel. He's buying a shovel. That's an expensive shovel, but hey, he's buying a shovel from Shimon, and they set the price at an istira. Now again, remember, istira is a unit of currency worth 96 ma. The problem just is, afterwards, after they set the price at an istira, they then say 100 mai. So those are two contradictory statements, because an istira itself is worth 96 ma, or mai, and again, then they're setting the price at 100 mai. So now we can read that once more. Beirav, istira mea mai. So Reuven's buying something from Shimon. They set the price, and the way they frame it is istira mea mai. So then what's the halacha? Mea mai. What's the price of the item being purchased? 100 mai. Right, Mea Mai, that's the price. Which is another way of saying what? Tafas Lashon Achron. Seize the last Lashon. Mea Mai Istira. What happens again if they set the price as 100 Mai Istira? Then what's the halacha? Istira. Alright, so we'll say Salacha L'maisa. If you take a look at the Rashbam, by the way, in the widest lines, about 8 lines in, Istira Mea Mai, Mea Mai, Mea Mai Istira. Amr L'chavira B'kama Chafetz Zeh. Right, Reuven goes over to Shimon and says, Shimon, how much is this object? Amr Le Istira Mea Mai, and Shimon says it's an Istira, 100 Mai. V'nisratzu, and they agree. Mea mai chayiv lo. Reuven has to pay mea mai. V'im lo amar lo mea mai istira chayiv lo istira. So we'll say, so again, saloch l'meisa my kamash malon tafas lashon achron. Okay, so we'll say, so now what are we being taught over here? Tafas lashon achron, that you go ahead and you seize the last lashon. That's right. When you make two contradictory lashonos, ultimately, or you say two contradictory lashonos, you go after the last lashon. Fine. So the Gemara says, okay, I got it. Like ha'amarav chadazimna. So we'll say, so again, lemaisa. We said this already. In other words, I'll say in general, once you go ahead and you espouse the fundamental machlokes, you don't have to articulate every single case where the machlokes comes up. I got it. anytime you make two contradictory statements in the context of a transaction, we're going to have a machlokes. Benana says tafas lashon achron, just sees the last lashon, and the others say it's a suffix, and therefore maman amot of suffix cholkin. So what's going on over here? So I want to say, by the way, I just want to point out this is actually like a nice illustration of this principle, right? Because before we even go on, how would this play out? So according to Bananas, it's easy, right? According to Bananas, always sees the last lashon. According to the Chachamim, or whoever the Chachamim are, maman amot of suffix cholkin. So what would you do in this case? Remember, what's the maman amot of suffix? What's the maman amot of suffix amount? 4 moi, right? So what would you do according to the Chachamim? Split it, divide it by 2. So this is just a nice illustration of how this actually plays out. Fine. So the point over here is all right, so Rav already said this. The Amarav, because Rav said, because Rav said, if I was there, now where's the there? If I was there in Sipori, when they were adjudicating the bathhouse case about the 13th month, I would have awarded the full amount to the maskir, to the owner. Now take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's in the wide lines, pretty much like right in the middle. So again, remember, Serbo says, let's go back for just a second. What was the bathhouse case? Ruvain leased a bathhouse to Shimon, and he told him 12 dinar for the year, 1 dinar per month. Then it turned out to be a leap year. So Bananas, not a problem. Bananas says we look at it as a monthly rental. But yet, when it came from Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi, they said it's maman amotel b'safek and maman amotel b'safek yachloku. Now Rav says, by the way, if I was there, hey, you always love when people say, if I was there, I would have, So Rav says, right, if I was there, I would have awarded, so Rav says, I would have awarded the full 13th month to the owner. Now, what does that show? So Rabbi says, look at the Rashbam. The tafas lashon achron. What Rav is saying is, I hold like Bananas, tafas lashon achron, and therefore in the bathhouse case, we would have looked at it as a monthly rental and not as a yearly rental, and therefore now that there's a leap month, it goes fully to the renter. So we'll say, so now Rav is already, first of all, so Rav is already on record, number one, as quoting the position of Bananas and actually holding like Bananas. So why the need to bring up this case over here of istira me'amai, to which the Gemara says, skip the parentheses, so the Gemara says, ma'od tema perushe kamefarish. So we'll say, here's the difference. I would have thought as follows. Maybe in this case over here it's different. Maybe halach l'maisa, again, this is not a tafas lashon achron case, but rather again this is an explanation case. What does this mean? Take a look at the Rashbam. Ma'u de tema lav mishum de islay tafas lashon achron kamar yehivne kula l'maskir ela mishum de ika l'meimar perushe kamefarish velo mehader hader beklal ela niskavin lito dinar zav l'chol chodesh. So we'll say here's the difference. Sorry, not in the Mal case, but in the bathhouse case. And what's confusing about the bathhouse case, I will say, is because we're not dealing with contradictory lashonos. So because you're not dealing with contradictory lashonos, it is easy to say that what? That lashon 2 comes to clarify lashon 1. That in other words, yes, it is, I am renting, right, Ruvain says, I'm renting you this bathhouse for a year. But understand what that means, but really, a year is made up of months. Sometimes there could be an additional month. So let's add in this extra clause in the event of an extra month. So you can reconcile the two statements. So from the bathhouse case, even though Rav goes ahead and says, I award the full 13th month to the owner, that's not necessarily indicative that he holds tafas lashon achron. It's just that he could hold that I see these two statements as really working in concert with each other. But maybe he rejects tafas lashon achron. Finish up the Rashbam. So that's what he thought. So therefore, again, I would have thought that in that case, halacha l'maisa, statement number 2 is really just coming to clarify statement number 1. But this is not a toughest lashon acharon situation at all. To which the Gemara says, kamash malan, no. Kamash malan, no. That Rav actually holds like bananas. So both say. So the idea over here is as follows. So even though, right, what was bothering the Gemara? Rav just quoted this case of the istira mea mai, right, mea mai istira, and essentially whichever value you use last is the one. That halacha l'maisa is going to define the transaction. That's tafos lashon acharon. So the Gemara is saying, Rav, why are you quoting another case of bananas? You already commented on the bathhouse case, and in the bathhouse case, you already said that I would, if I was in Tzipori, I would have awarded the 13th month fully to the owner, which shows what tafos lashon acharon. So if you said tafos lashon acharon over there, why do you have to bring down another case? I'll tell you why. The Gemara says because the bathhouse case is not pashut, right? What do I mean the bathhouse case is not pashut? You can't necessarily, even though Rav says I would have awarded the full 13th month to Reuben, the owner of the bathhouse, that's not necessarily indicative of tafos lashon acharon. Why? Because there I could just easily say those two lashonos really work beautifully in concert with each other, right? That lashon 2 is coming to clarify lashon 1. Lashon 1 says this is a yearly arrangement. We got it. It's a yearly arrangement, but halacha l'maisa, even though it's a yearly arrangement, halacha l'maisa, again, there's always the possibility of a leap year. So within the year, there could be a 13th month. That second statement comes to clarify the first. But it doesn't say show tafos lashon acharon. Therefore, Rav comes along and says over here in this case of the istira, mea mai, tafos lashon acharon. So I will say, so bottom line, we end off halacha l'maisa with a raging dispute, a raging machlokes about tafos lashon acharon. So halacha l'maisa again. So again, we go ahead and we see bananas holds we always seize on the last lashon, right? Whereas everyone else seems to say that halacha l'maisa, we're not sure. Is it tafos lashon rishon, tafos lashon acharon, and therefore halacha l'maisa, maman hamutal b'safek, and maman hamutal b'safek cholkin. I will say halacha l'maisa, we generally go ahead and reject bananas. That we don't say tafos lashon acharon, right? Again, cases are dealt with a little bit differently, but in a general sense, we're not tafos lashon acharon. Rather, again, we generally take the approach of it's maman hamutal b'safek, and therefore again cholkin or motzi mechaver lavaraya, depending on the particular case. So we'll see. Again, every case plays out differently, but in a general sense, we reject this position of bananas. But I will say, but it's important to understand, and this is a very important sugya for the days in which we are in now, right? In general, both sides, do we say tafos lashon rishon, tafos lashon acharon, in terms of how we look at ourselves, right? A lot of times, one of the most challenging parts when it comes to doing tshuva is, do I really have the ability to become someone different? You know, we create like these beautiful visions for ourselves of what we want to do, how we want to do it, the people we want to become. And a lot of times what ends up happening in life, we spoke about this on second day of Rosh Hashanah, a lot of times what ends up happening in life is, I can't really get traction on that new life vision because I feel so bogged down. I feel so bogged down by the past. How could someone like me who has done all of these things, who has lived life in such a compromised way for all of this time, how could someone like me with all of this baggage really turn things around? And it's something, it creeps into our psyche, it creeps into our soul, and so often prevents us from making the necessary, profound, and cathartic change that we have the ability to do. So it's just important to understand that even though we might not paskin halacha l'mais like bananas, we absolutely paskin hashkafa l'mais like bananas. Tafos lashon acharon. So as we always say, Maida hava hava, what was. What was. At the end of the day, tafos lashon acharon. Look at who you want to be now. Don't worry about who you have been. Don't worry about what you have been. But focus on the vision you have for yourself now. Tafos lashon acharon. That's what counts. The past, I would say the past can't be undone, but the truth is the power of tshuva is the past could even be undone. But even if they can't undo the past, just leave it where it is, in the past. Tafos lashon acharon. Create a beautiful vision for yourself, create a beautiful mission for yourself, and do what you can to bring it to actualization. Also, we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach, everyone. Everyone.
Topic of Gemara when we talk talking about trying to reconcile Shmuel. He said Elalo, so we're talking about specifically. So it's because he said specifically it's like toughest light. So we're saying according to him, it has nothing to do with bananas at all. It's just the fact that he grabbed it, and that's why we're saying what he said. Why does it matter then what lashon he said? We're saying specifically it's in the second case where he said ani mochar lecha for a core, and then he said also a sella for a sa.
No, because if he just said a sa, correct, then it's clear it's not finished until the end.
So there's no suffix.
Correct. There's no suffix at all.
It doesn't matter the fact that he was toughest lot.
That is correct. That at least that's where the Gemara is coming from. 100%.
Okay.
If you use that lashon, it would not matter at all.
Because if it's specifically about a toughest lot, then every son he took really, it should be from his.
Correct.